Welcome to this tutorial. In this tutorial, you will learn how to create temporary views and how to make them permanent. You will also create concrete beams to your model and learn how to cut parts. A temporary view is a view that hasn't been given a permanent name. A temporary view's name has a set of parentheses around it. Once you close a temporary view, it's gone. Temporary views can be made permanent by removing the parentheses or giving the view a new name. To help create the beams, let's create a view at depth 2800. To create a temporary view, go to the View tab and under New View, select Basic View. Enter 2800 in the coordinate field in the dialog that opens, and click Create. A temporary view is created. You can close the dialog. To save the view, double-click the view to open View Properties. Load the Grid Plan View settings. Type Plan 2800 into the name field. Make sure that the angle is set to plane and click Modify. Click OK to close the View Properties. Pause here to practice what you just learned. Let's model the beams in place at level 2800. First, let's open up the view you created earlier. At level 2800, under Window, select a tile vertically. Open the Properties for Concrete Beam from the ribbon by holding down the Shift key. The profile should be 600 by 400. The depth for the beam should be set to front and 0. Let's add beams to the model. In the Plan 2800 view, add a beam between AE1 and B1. To create a beam, pick the start point and then the end point. You can also pick a start point and enter a value to define the end point. Create a second beam from B1 to C1. Interrupt the command. Now let's again use the Copy tool to create beams to grid lines 2, 4, and 5. Use a selection filter, Beams, to select the beams from the model. Selection filters are useful when selecting parts from a model that has a lot of different elements. Drag the mouse around the beams. Then, using the Copy tool, copy the beams to grid lines 2, 4, and 5. Next, create beams in the other directions, between grid lines A1 and A2, A2 and A4, and A4 and A5. Interrupt the command. Next, copy the beams for grid lines B and C. Finally, interrupt the command. Remember to set the selection filter back to standard. Pause here to practice what you just learned. As you can see, the beams currently overlap the columns we created. You can easily fix this with the Part Cut tools. Go to the ribbon and to the Edit tab. Here are the tools to cut parts. Line cuts can be used to shape the end of a beam. Let's try it. Pick the part to cut, then to points to create the cut line. Then pick the side you want to remove. Interrupt the command. If you want to copy the beams now, cut parts are intelligent enough to keep the cuts in the same place. The cut part in tool works in a similar way, except that you don't have to define which side to remove. Pick the part to cut. The points for the cut line and the end of the beam is cut. Interrupt the command. If you don't want to create cuts, you can use direct modification to modify part lengths. To modify the length of a beam, drag the handle at the end of the beam to where you want it. Interrupt the command. A fast way to create cuts is to use the Part Cut tool. Pick a part to cut, and then the cutting part. You can select multiple parts to be cut by the cutting part at the same time. Let's use this to cut the rest of the beams in the model. When you're done, interrupt the command. You have now reached the end of this tutorial. In this tutorial, you learned how to create temporary views, how to save them, and how to model concrete beams. You also learned how to cut parts.